Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 355 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about the NBA's MVP race between Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. NBA fans and media are divided about which one of these two should be league MVP. The reigning MVP, Nikola Jokic, an already three-time winner, is averaging a career-high 28.9 points per game and 10.5 assists, second most in the league to go along with 13 rebounds, third most in the entire NBA. He's also incredibly efficient, shooting 43% from three and 55% overall. For Gilgeous-Alexander, he's leading the NBA with 32.7 points per game, shooting 52% from the field, and has had 4 50-point games this season, including 2 of them in a span of a week. Shai scored 54 points on January 22nd and 52 on January 29th. Both of their numbers scream MVP. When it comes to team success, that goes to Shai. The Thunder have currently, as I record this, a 52-12 record and are 11 games ahead of the second-seeded Nuggets. Fans of sports always like to talk about this idea of value and how you can quantify that. I think it's impossible to do when you're talking about these two players, because I believe in the case of both of them, their organizations would be lost without them. I mean, if you remove Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets, they are not a playoff team. And if you remove Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the OKC Thunder, they are not a playoff team. That makes it impossible to say which one of them is more valuable to their team. They are both on very good basketball teams, but they are the lone superstar. They're not on super teams. They don't have superstar teammates. They are the sole engines of their teams. Yes, I like Jamal Murray. I think he is a very good point guard who should be an all-star in the near future, but he is not a superstar. And Chet Holmgren has not reached his full potential yet. What's happening in the NBA right now is kind of reminding me what happened with this year's NFL MVP. I mean, a lot of people were talking about Lamar Jackson being way better than Josh Allen. Now, I did believe that Josh Allen was the right choice for NFL MVP, but I do believe you could make a case there were some people who were just tired of Lamar Jackson winning NFL MVP. You really get the sense that the people voting for these awards do not want to reward the same guy over and over again. And I find that interesting because when I was growing up, Barry Bonds was winning a boatload of MVPs in the sport of baseball. He won 7 MVPs, including 4 in a row from 2001 to 2004. And that's the way you should do it if a player is so much better than anyone else. But here's the problem. There is a smaller separation between these two players. The uniqueness of Jokic is what stands out. In an era where the big man has become dispensable, he's not only the best big in the entire sport, he's also doing things that guards do better than most point guards. I keep hearing this narrative that some people are tired of us saying that we've never seen anything like Nikola Jokic, when in reality is, we've never seen anything like Nikola Jokic. This guy just had a game with 31 points, 21 rebounds, and 22 assists. He's the most complete basketball player in the sport right now, and he's not forcing it. I don't think he is forcing it. I don't think he's someone who is chasing the triple-double. One thing that's not getting talked about enough when it comes to these two players is they were never predicted to be the two best players in the NBA. I mean, I remember a time when there was a debate between who was better between Jokic and Jusuf Nurkic. He was a second-round pick who has a chance of becoming a 4-time MVP award winner. And in the case of SGA, yes, he was a high pick at 11, but the Clippers traded him away to bring in Paul George to entice Kawhi Leonard to go there. What a massive mistake made by the Clippers. He's an old school point guard. He controls the pace of play. He never ever plays out of control. So who would I personally pick between the two right now? I would go Jokic. I think he's on a run of dominance that's going to make him one of the all-time greats. And I don't agree with the takes that he's boring to watch play. He's not. He's just not the flashiest player on earth, and that is something that I don't think either player is. Desperate to win this award. You get the sense that all they care about is winning the basketball game they are playing in. I mean, I get it. Is it interesting to think about what the NBA would be like if a bigger personality was the face of it? I think that's why people are obsessed with this notion that Anthony Edwards is going to become the face of basketball because he is super entertaining to watch play the game and to listen to when he speaks. I mean, he is a large personality where these two players are not. They are two guys who just let their game speak for themselves, and I admire that. But throughout the history of the league, it has been dominated by big personalities. The Michael Jordans, the Larry Birds, the Magic Johnsons, the Kobe Bryants, the LeBron Jameses, Allen Iverson. I mean, you name the guy. I mean, when they were the faces of the sport, they were larger than life personalities, and I don't think you can make the case for Nikola Jokic being that or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being that. It's almost like what NBA fans want for an MVP is a showman. So who has the edge currently? I mean, it does feel like Shai has the edge. I mean, the OKC Thunder have been a great team this year. I just watched them play against the Boston Celtics. They were really good in that game. He was doing whatever he wanted to do during that game. And one of the reasons I might give Shai an edge here is because of the opponents he has to go up against night in and night out. I mean, he is playing the point guard position. He is putting up these numbers against great defenders like Drew Holiday of the Boston Celtics, like Derek White of the Boston Celtics. And he has to go up against the other great offensive point guards throughout the league, the Steph Currys, the Dame Lillards. So the other thing I've yet to talk about on this podcast is the fact that these two play for secondary markets. I mean, Nikola Jokic plays for the Denver Nuggets, while Gilgeous-Alexander plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And as a fan of the league, you sometimes wonder if they would be even bigger names if they were in those bigger markets. Like if Shai was playing for the New York Knicks, would he be getting even more praise? If Nikola Jokic was the center for the LA Lakers. I know the bigger markets don't mean as much as they used to, but I still think there is something there. Everyone seems to compare Nikola Jokic to Tim Duncan because he's not a flashy player. I think what they're really saying is that Nikola Jokic is like Tim Duncan because he plays for the Denver Nuggets and Tim Duncan played for the San Antonio Spurs, and those are not the all-time great franchises in NBA history. I mean, would Tim Duncan really have gotten the nickname Mr. Fundamental if he were playing for the New York Knicks? Absolutely not. He would be called one of the most entertaining players of all time. I think that San Antonio was a factor there, and I think Jokic playing in Denver is clearly a factor in how people perceive his game. These two are not going away anytime soon. Nikola Jokic is only 30 years old and Shai is 26. But I really do believe if you asked most fans of the NBA who is going to be the face of the league in the next 5 years, they would say the names Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards, or Giannis Antetokounmpo. They would not say Nikola Jokic, and they would not say Gilgeous-Alexander. And that's really fascinating to me. And that's what's really interesting about this debate, because there are some people out there who don't want to anoint either of them as the best player in the sport. Like, I was watching a broadcast of a game the other day where they were saying that Giannis should be in the MVP hunt. I'm a fan of the Boston Celtics. There are fans out there who believe Jason Tatum should be in the MVP hunt. And as big of a fan of Jason Tatum as I am, I believe these two players are clearly having far better seasons than Tatum. With Shai and the Thunder, I think there are just a ton of NBA fans who don't take that team seriously as legitimate contenders, and I'm kind of there with you. Like, I don't know if the season's going to end with the OKC Thunder winning an NBA championship. I do believe, however, they're going to make it to the Western Conference Finals, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be against the Denver Nuggets. I mean, I think we're headed towards a Thunder's-Lakers conference final finals matchup, and I think most people would pick LeBron and Luka over Shai and the OKC Thunder because of the star power of the Lakers. I don't really love all this talk about who's going to be the face of the league after LeBron retires. I don't think it's going to come down to who's winning all of the MVP awards. I think it's going to come down to who's winning a lot during the playoffs. If Nikola Jokic could win 2 to 3 more NBA finals, then he's going to be the signature face of the league because he's going to have the MVPs and he's going to have the rings. Right now, he only has one and Shai has none. Michael Jordan was the face of basketball because he won the NBA finals 6 times. Kobe won 5. LeBron has 3 but has been there a bunch. Steph Curry has won 4 times. My point is the awards are great and the stats are great, but they can only take you so far. At some point, it's going to come down to winning. I do have to say this as somebody who does love basketball. I do find it kind of tiring, the year after year talk of who's going to win the MVP award. Like, does it really matter at the end of the day? I don't know. There are years where I care more than others. And this year, I'm just far more interested in all the talk about who should be MVP over the actual players themselves, and that's a bit of a problem. It also has to be said about basketball right now that a lot of the people who are up for MVP are just the guys who are playing every day. I mean, there's so many guys resting, there's so many guys missing time that they're just not eligible for these awards. I mean, I'm one of the people who really want Victor Wembanyama to emerge next season as a legitimate MVP candidate, but am I confident in the fact that he could play in 65 plus games and turn the San Antonio Spurs into a playoff contending team? No. My guy Tatum plays in a lot of games, but he is playing on a team that has a stacked roster. He is playing with the likes of Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, so he has other guys scoring the basketball. He's not being asked to do everything. I feel the same way about football too. I mean, the only people we're giving MVP awards to are starting quarterbacks, and the only people we're giving MVP awards to in basketball are the young guys who are playing in the minimum amount of games to win the award. The selection is just becoming fewer and fewer, and I feel the exact same way about football. Like at the end of the season, it's just coming down to these 2 guys. At the end of the basketball season, it's just coming down to these 2 guys. And there's only so many hours of the day you can talk about their stats. I do find it wild that there are some people out here acting like Gilgeous-Alexander is just now emerging. It's like this guy's been a star for a while now. I do find it a bit funny that the 2 people who are up for the NBA's biggest awards are 2 guys who do not heavily rely on the free-point shot. Yes, Nikola Jokic is consistent when it comes to making free-pointers, but he's not Steph Curry. Like, that's not all he does. But whenever I hear anyone talk about modern basketball, all they talk about is how sick and tired they are of the free-point shot. Jokic attempts less than 5 free-pointers a game, and Shai averages less than 6 free-point attempts a game. That's why all of the talk about Jokic being boring is insane to me. It's like, on one hand, you can't take all of the free-point shots, yet here's a guy who plays the game very differently, and yet you say things like he's not athletic enough. It's almost like he's offering you the exact thing you want from basketball players, yet some people are rejecting it fully. I honestly have no idea how this is all going to pan out. I mean, there are some people out there who will have you believe that Shai is running away with this award or that Jokic is running away with this award. Either way, there will be a large amount of NBA fans not happy with who takes it home. There will be some people saying that Jokic is overrated, that you just keep giving him this award year after year. And then when it comes to Shai, they'll be like, what does this man have to do to win the MVP award? There's just way too many factors when it comes to deciding who the MVP is. I mean, it sounds like they're using the individual stats. They're using the team's success. Nikola Jokic is averaging a triple-double. I mean, think about that fact, that a big man in today's league is averaging a triple-double. I am somebody who gets annoyed with all of the talks about the triple-double. I mean, it's just 10 points, it's just 10 rebounds, it's just 10 assists. Sometimes it just feels like it's numbers. But when it's a big man doing it like this and being as dominant as he is I can't deny that I find it endlessly impressive. Maybe it's not fair to say this, but I've seen so many point guards dominate this era of basketball where the Steph Currys win the MVPs. I've seen the Derrick Roses. I've seen the Russell Westbrooks. I have not seen a big man dominate like this since I grew up watching basketball, when you had the Shaqs, when you had the Tim Duncans, when you had the Yao Mings. I mean, the bigs were just thriving in that era of basketball. They were all over the place. But then over the last decade or so, it's been all about the guards and the wing players, and here comes this guy out of nowhere just dominating the sport like no one else before. I can't just ignore that. I won't ignore that. I think he should be the NBA MVP this year. And I'm not saying that as a slight to SGA. I wouldn't even be mad if he ended up taking home the award. It's like how I felt about the NFL MVP. I wanted Josh Allen to win the award. I thought Josh Allen should win the award, but I wasn't going to be outraged if it went to Lamar Jackson. He's more than a worthy candidate, and so is Shai for NBA MVP. Having said all that, I do want a third player to emerge in this conversation next year. I want the Jason Tatums to be a part of the conversation. I want Luka Doncic to emerge as a legitimate candidate. Wembanyama as well. And yeah, maybe this will never happen, but can we get a Ja Morant MVP season somewhere in the near future? I just want to see that guy go completely off and become one of the faces of the league. Anthony Edwards as well. I want all of these young guys to be in the race. In March, just having it down to these two is kind of anticlimactic, to say the least. And part of the fact is I don't think anyone has had an original opinion on Nikola Jokic in the last 3 seasons. He's a dominant player. He's really fun to watch play the game, but every negative complaint about him has remained the same. There are no new thoughts about this player. And I also think even the people tearing down Jokic aren't talking enough about Gilgeous-Alexander as a player. It's more about how that one guy shouldn't be MVP and not about why this guy should be MVP. I don't know if I'm right about this, but it's just how I feel. Like, I don't think there are that many players in the league who actually want to win MVP. I mean, it used to be a thing that players desperately desired. Like, I hear people on Boston Sports Radio talk about how they feel that Jason Tatum really wants to win an MVP. I don't know if I agree with that take. I remember when Steve Nash was named a 2-time MVP 2 years in a row, and each of those seasons, Shaquille O'Neal was talking about the fact that he should have won those awards instead. When Steph Curry was winning it, you could tell that James Harden also wanted to win an MVP as well. It's really hard to get a reading if Nikola Jokic really wants a 4th MVP award, or if Gilgeous-Alexander even wants to win one. I'm sure he does. I just don't think it means as much to him as it used to mean to other players in the past. And while I might be saying that as a negative, it could possibly be a good thing, because here you have these 2 stars who all they want to do is win for their teams and be the best player for their teams. I mean, they're not flashy. They're not in-your-face kind of guys. They're not calling themselves the best players in the league. They are just quietly putting up the best numbers in the sport. I don't know how you're not rooting for both of these guys. I mean, they are so likable as well as being the 2 best players in the game. You do get a sense that even if Shai doesn't win the award this season, it is inevitable that at some point he is going to take home an NBA MVP award. And one of the reasons I feel that way is because I don't think the OKC Thunder are going away anytime soon. I mean, they are the youngest team in the league, and they are the best team in the league record-wise, and their players are only going to get better. Chet Holmgren is going to continue to grow. He might turn into a superstar himself at some point. And I'll close on Jokic. If he does end up winning a 4th MVP, is it possible he could end up breaking the NBA record of 6 held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? Absolutely, because this guy isn't letting up. He's going to be the same Jokic next year and the year after that as well. If Jokic wins this MVP, he will tie LeBron James with 4. In case you were wondering, second all-time is a tie between Michael Jordan and Bill Russell. They both have won the MVP award 5 times. Those are the players that Jokic is currently in conversation with. No offense to Carmelo Anthony, he's already the greatest Denver Nugget of all time, and I think he's in the territory of reaching the top 10 basketball player of all time conversation. I think that's where we are headed when it comes to Nikola Jokic. I mean, just talking about the other bigs, I already put him ahead of Shaquille O'Neal and Hakeem Olajuwon. The Tim Duncan conversation is interesting. I don't know if yet he's better than Tim Duncan, but he's getting there, and if he keeps going at the rate he's going and can do it into his 30s, he'll be there. He'll go further than Tim Duncan. So I hope you enjoy all of this talk of Nikola Jokic and Gilgeous-Alexander for NBA MVP, because it's not going away. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.